Hey everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of our League of Legends Roundtable. I'm Hunter Lee here in San Francisco, and joining me as always is Spellsy.
Hello.
And joining us from Santa Monica, Travis.
Hunter, there's nowhere I would rather be than on the show with you right now.
That's what I love to hear. Travis just got back from PAX, an amazing tournament, over 400,000 concurrents on Twitch for the finals. What was it like in person?
Well, it was an amazing tournament, Hunter, because he got first place. Other than that, no, it was really cool. They had a huge area compared to the past three PAX. I thought that it was really crazy that they were able to fill it up, and in fact, they had to block more people from entering the room on the final day of Grand Finals, or the finals day. Let's go with that. The final day of Finals day.
Finals.
And it was just really impressive. I barely got to see the show floor because the games would just always go right until or right after the show floor closing or whatever, but it was still worth it because the games were so crazy, and every day you really didn't know what you were going to get.
Yeah. Well, let's dive right in. TSM, they had an amazing tournament, certainly surprising all of us, you can tell by our predictions, coming back in all three matches, and eventually against Dig, 1-0 down, against LMQ, 2-1 down, and against Cloud9 again, 2-1 down to win first place and move on to Worlds with the #1 seed. That was a surprise for me, at least.
Yeah.
What happened?
I don't know. It was really crazy because Cloud9 looked so strong after their best-of-3 against Curse, and they just crushed them in all three games. And then nobody predicted TSM was going to win in our onGamers predictions. And they really showed up to play, I think, and it was definitely a crazy outcome, I think, for the finals.
Travis, you'd been hearing behind the scenes, especially TSM scrim record and other things, that maybe TSM was a stronger pick than we thought, but they didn't look particularly good against Dignitas before heading up for PAX. What are you hearing? What do you think was the difference?
I don't know. I think that they just had a lot of confidence going into it. I mean, as Loco Doco so generously pointed out, we were all incorrect on our predictions, and I think that well, here's what I wrote right before that. So the story of PAX for me was anytime I went to like a team or a player who had been scrimming against another team or who had been scrimming against both teams or whatever. Anyway, players, teams, all these guys, their predictions were always completely wrong from what they told me. They tell me, oh yeah, Curse is going to get stomped by LMQ. Obviously that didn't happen. Like they told me all these different things, and it was always the opposite. So my prediction, like right before finals, people had been telling me Cloud9 was going to stomp TSM. People had been telling me TSM was going to stomp Cloud9. So my prediction was that it would be a crazy nail biter that would go 5 games and come down to the last minute, which was exactly what happened. So I don't know. I knew that Cloud9 was getting completely destroyed by TSM scrims, and as everybody always says, scrims don't always matter, but sometimes they do.
I was impressed. I mean, championship grit, I guess is what you might call it, coming back all of those times. Bjergsen was incredible. Hard carried that team, so consistent every game. If just one other member of TSM showed up to play, suddenly they were a legitimate team. I think it's my feeling coming out, their ceiling may be the highest in NA. When they are rolling, they're really rolling. And those kind of Zera snipes from halfway across the map while Dyrus is diving in on people were really impressive. But if Wild Turtle or Amazing or Dyrus has a bad game or more than one, TSM loses, and they lost some of those games really hard. Cloud9, and they somehow can bounce back. I don't know what that means for Worlds, but they were able to play good enough to get first place here.
Yeah, Bjergsen looked really good even in his losses and all that kind of stuff. Like Bjergsen really, like you said, hard carried them, I think. I think Wild Turtle had like hit or miss games, even though everybody kind of has been favoring him since the last team fight in the last game. And TSM's really interesting. I think their biggest strength is that they are good at coming back in the series, but then adapting. Like in the last series against C9 in Game 1, they kind of got beat by this 80 carry top lane kind of switched meta, but then in the second game they had this really nice counterplay, I thought, where they brought the Lucian and they did the 4v0 and they got all of these towers down, and it was like a really nice adaptation.
Yeah.
I think that's the most exciting thing I thought from TSM, and that was the thing that I thought was really unique to them. I don't know. So that's what I think TSM's greatest strength is, other than Bjergsen.
Yeah, I mean, for teams to scrim each other that often, it's a surprise to me that they'd be able to surprise each other. I assume they were seeing that Balls, Lemon Nation duo lane bot regularly, but it did seem to catch them unprepared in game one. Like you said, they adapted quickly. Travis, if you're TSM or a TSM fan looking ahead to Worlds, I assume you're positively surprised, but are you feeling confident going in after these playoffs?
Well, if you're a TSM fan, you're always feeling confident going into everything. But I don't know. As much as I enjoyed PAX, there wasn't anything that made me feel very hyped for North America. I mean, we discussed this on the last episode that at the start of the split, we were like, man, North America's bringing it. Like, all these teams are going to be competitive. And then, I don't know, there were just so many weird moments at PAX that made me really feel like I look at TSM and this is a line for Loco for 2 months from now whenever he's sitting on a beach enjoying like the first place prize pool from Worlds. But I look at TSM and I don't really think like this is the team that's going to like go on to like, you know, semis or whatever, or even finals.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's going to be any North American team that makes it out of groups. I despite TSM winning, I still feel like Cloud9 has, I don't know, some of the better chances of getting out. LMQ could show up. I don't know. I just don't. I'm not going into Worlds with very high expectations for the region that I live in. Yeah,
as a North American fan, I was optimistic going into the playoffs, even though NA had an up and down split. Because Cloud9, I sort of had faith in them, and then they stomped Curse super hard, and you were like, okay, this is our team. Like last year, first international experience, you know, rookies coming in, you need a failure, maybe you come back. Now they've got more experience, they're ready to go. And then the TSM series happens, not particularly impressive, pretty up and down play. That was a surprise, and I think a disappointment probably for them as well. A disappointment that to lose that series. Again, they scrim TSM all the time. What happened?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, Cloud9 had like the 10-0 playoff streak or whatever, and then when they 3-0'd Curse, it was like, oh, they might actually keep this streak, even though they themselves predicted that they were going to lose. But it was, I don't know, it was really, they kind of faltered there at the end. I think they have trouble and when High doesn't do well. Yeah. I think that's their biggest thing that maybe Worlds team will exploit, but like I feel like if High is dying on Yasuo or something, then they just like can't come back as a team because I think they're so invested in High. He's their shot caller and he's like their everything, and I think if he does bad, then they're gonna kind of crumble at Worlds. But I mean, like you said, I think it could be C9 or TSM. Like C9 should come back better than last year, hopefully, but I don't have that much faith in North America either.
I don't think we should be particularly surprised. Fnatic's main thing in international play last year at Worlds was to ban out High in their matches and really push him somewhere uncomfortable. That Yasuo pick made me really unhappy when I saw them lock that in the final game. You spend more time around the team. Is High both the emotional and sort of like in-game leader that we sort of hear he is? Do they live or die with High?
I mean, it's certainly. Like, I mean, Link talked about this at All-Stars, where he's definitely the core of that team, and so much of, like, the communication, everything gets channeled through him. I think if you really look at it, though, and I've heard pros say this as well, that Meteos is really, like, the gameplay core of that team in terms of the fact that he's, like I've heard people say Cloud9 just gets completely carried by Meteos, and I don't know if that's necessarily the case. Maybe our stats person could look up some numbers to tell us, but I do think that even if he's not the guy who's like carrying your team, he's not like the Bjergsen of Cloud9, that it is really important that he have like a good head on his shoulders for this kind of thing, because he is a very big part of just the stability, I guess, of the team, is maybe a good way to put it.
Yeah, I think one of the things I took away from that series was that it's really hard to carry out of the jungle right now in this meta. Meteos got up 3-0 on Elise and could do nothing later in that game. Maybe that's more Elise than jungle in general, but for all of his strength and expertise, the team really was high or low. Bad, terrible pun, but laugh with that. But not Meteos. Meteos may be the rock for Cloud9, but not enough maybe out of the jungle.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fair enough. All right, third place, LMQ. You will get to Curse in just a minute, and just that crushing loss for them. But LMQ, some resiliency to go down 2-0 in that final series, a spot at Worlds on the line, and win 3 match games in a row to get that spot. Pushes 5 foreigners, you know, who representing NA, and we can talk about that a lot later in the show. But LMQ definitely, after you tune in or you watch those first 2 games, not confident about what they have. Inconsistent against TSM as well, but they won 3 games in a row. Travis, were you as surprised as we were to see that kind of turnaround?
I was. Everyone was. Alex Penn tweeted, "Congratulations to Curse on making it to Worlds."
Yeah.
You know, we were coordinating interviews, and it was like, okay, so who are we going to interview from Curse? We were like, everybody was ready to see like the Curse victory at the very end of that 3rd game. And I mean, maybe it's too hard to separate the conversation around Curse from the conversation of LMQ, but I don't know, like it was just really surprising to see that happen. You felt like you could just sort of see, you know, it's like in one of those disaster movies or something where like a whole city is crumbling from like a monster attack or some natural disaster, and you just sort of see it fall down. That was like what was happening there. And then LMQ was the natural disaster.
Right.
You know, those guys came through. I mean, Ackerman still didn't seem to be on the top of his game, which was kind of surprising, but it was still, I don't know. I was just impressed because I don't think we've seen that too much lately out of North American teams, the ability to just be like on the verge of losing it all, and then it seems like North American teams tilt more than ever these days. So
yeah, this was a pretty tilt-resistant playoff, at least from 2 of the 3 Worlds teams. So choke from Curse or something different from LMQ, some kind of adaptation partway in that led to their victory.
I mean, in Liquid's AMA, I think he explained this in a way that I think makes sense, is that LMQ kind of adapted their picks to Curse's strategy. And when LMQ started running 2 tanks or whatever, or extra tanky lineup, and Curse couldn't really adapt to it. And they blamed, first they thought it was like a dragon, and they just like couldn't really adapt. And I think that's kind of a shame. And then by game 5, I mean, game 5 you're already, like, you're out. And then it was so heartbreaking too to see them at the end and all the player cams and stuff. But
yeah, I
think Curse should be happy. Or they're not going to be happy, but they should be okay with their finish, I think, on this split. There was a lot of hype over teams like Dignitas and teams like CLG who are getting these new players, and Curse kind of just got X Special, and I think they came out with a decent standing.
Certainly, despite even the 4th place Destiny joke, you would not have picked them at the beginning of the season to finish ahead of Dig or CLG. And even like 3 weeks ago, you know, like coming into the final weeks of the season, you wouldn't have picked them to finish ahead of Dig or CLG. And yet there they are, solidly in 4th, so close to Worlds, about as close as you can get without actually going. I assume they'll look back on this and feel confident going into next split. I would hope more confident than Dig or CLG given the way they finished the season. But Travis, again, you were there with them in person. What's the takeaway from this? How do you bounce back from something that devastating?
Everyone was talking about, like, there was a moment where Doublelift asked, I think it was Zion, maybe, like, yo, who's in a worse position right now, us, you, or Curse? And they were like, Curse. Like, even though Curse got so close, like, nobody wants to have that, like, oh, wow, we were just a couple minutes from finishing out a game and making it to Worlds. So I think it's really hard. From what I understand, like, the guys are sort of sitting in a place where they're like, okay, now we just sort of go home and hope that none of us get fired. Yeah. So I don't know. It's not a great place for Curse right now. I don't think that they come back from this looking really good. Especially because it's like the curse continues, always 4th.
Yeah. Certainly a brutal loss, and you know, I wouldn't blame them for looking around and trying to see what should we do differently next year. But they finished as hot as anybody did coming out of the season. I think they should be confident. Obviously a little depressed, but confident eventually going into next year that this is a 5-man team that can maybe make some noise. Maybe.
Yeah, so. I mean, it comes to like what your team's goals are. If Curse's team's goal is to be #1, I don't know if this team can do it because like they got crushed by C9.
Yeah.
If you're saying, oh, we need to be #1, we need to make changes or whatever, but I don't know. from a outside of the team, I think it's like, oh, you're okay with being a not top 1 team. I don't know.
I think, I mean, if I were cursed, my goal would be to make it to Worlds, not to do anything else. And this is where, you know, like, and this is the Dignitas comparison. I think is really accurate, and I'm surprised. I can see why Zion might feel better because, hey, you aren't getting relegated, and that was what was on the line to you. But that team, I would hope that they're not sitting confident after this playoffs and thinking this is our 5-man team going forward. I'd much rather have Curse's 5-man, I think, than Dig's 5-man. Dig looked pretty bad in their series against TSM, and they didn't look really that much better in their series against CLG. I would hope that they feel some of the sort of hunger or desperation coming out of this, that they need to get way better to be at Worlds next year. There's probably not much more to say beyond that, Travis, but you know, you were there with them. That team doesn't look like it's ready to go to Worlds next year.
No, I think there'll be pretty big changes. I mean, I don't know what, but I don't think that's a team that you just sort of keep around and pit back into the next split, unfortunately. Which is unfortunate because they're a fun team. You know, people like that team a lot and enjoyed them a lot, but I still don't think that that's something you keep around.
Yeah, so maybe changes to almost definitely changes. CLG finishes 6th after this past weekend, up for relegations next week, whatever. But that team's definitely got to, I assume, be extremely depressed. You had a wonderful interview with Double Lift that everybody should check out if they haven't yet, where you can really get a sense of behind the scenes. There's a lot of rumors right now about what'll happen. Seraph changes his Twitch stream title. Monty changes his Twitter description. You know, anything's possible.
Zuna comes in.
Zuna's in the background. Where do you think CLG is next week when they're defending their spot, and really next year? It seems like they kind of are a mess right now.
They should be able to beat Curse Academy. Maybe we'll talk more about that specifically in a little bit, but maybe they won't. I don't know. It's very strange. I do think you do kind of get the sense that that team is falling apart. Based solely just on the interview that I did with Double Lift, I feel a lot of people can look at that and say and question whether or not Seraph and Dexter will be around on the team for much longer. There's like everybody just wants to kill Link on Reddit. They're just like it's very strange to me, right? Like, I'm not a big Link fanboy, and he and I are not the closest people on that team. I mean, he seems like a nice guy and stuff, but it's not like we hang out. But it was very strange to me because a lot of people I saw something that said unable to get first place for 3 splits. You know, maybe this guy's had enough time or whatever. But I'm like, how many people are still in the LCS after having not been able to get first place in 3 splits? I don't know. Maybe Link isn't the best for that team. It's hard for me to think of too many other mid laners that would be better. And I don't know if you want to just gut it and kill, you know, like 60% of the team. Just keep your bot lane. Like, I don't know if that's a solution. So
yeah,
I don't know. There's just a lot to talk about. I actually think that by the time people watch this video, I suspect it'll be out that Monty is not the coach, because I mean it's almost essentially out. So I think it's probably fine to have a discussion around that.
Yeah.
I mean, he changes stuff. It's kind of funny because from the signs we've seen so far, it almost seems like Monty is salty that he's not the coach, like retweeting a CLG into Cloud9 stuff. I don't know. Maybe he'll talk more about it. You know, after an announcement goes out or makes it formal or something. I mean, one thing I'm really, really interested in is what Summoning Insight looks like after that announcement comes out, and what, you know, I want to see the discussion between Thorn and Monty.
That would be a lot to look forward to there for sure.
I have a question for you, Travis. So is Monty not going to be coaching them for relegations?
I mean, based on what we're seeing on Reddit right now, that's certainly the way it looks. And that's very strange, right? We also saw Zuna enter the house, and then I got some lame line from CLG management like, "Oh, he's visiting his friend Link and supporting him." So I don't. And then Zuna's brother tweeted at him something like, "Do work." So almost certainly Zuna is at least in some part helping them prepare.
Yeah.
And it looks like Monty is not.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I guess it's kind of up in the air, and I will have to wait until the official announcement. And again, unfortunately, because of the turnaround time on the show, I don't know if it'll be out by then. But I think we can act under the assumption that Monty is not the coach, and that Monty, and this is just an assumption, that Monty is not the coach, and that Monty will not be helping them with relegations. And so you wonder, like, what is this team? I've heard that they've only won 1 game in their last 17 matches, or 17 games. I don't know, Spellsy, you might have more idea on that than I do, but...
I think that's true.
Yeah.
Because they were on a, 13-game losing streak.
Yeah. So...
That's not good.
Going into their 5th place match.
Yeah. I mean, I think
that would make sense. Yeah. So they've won 1 game in 17.
4 of those games were the Hotshot GG crew.
Can't count. But yeah, I mean, I think like you said, this is certainly a team in turmoil. I imagine there's some resistance to gutting, but if I'm new coach of CLG, I at least want to consider a lot of different options in this offseason. And I've been passing around a pet theory around the office, but I think they should move Double Lift to mid lane. At least try that, because I think you have your biggest playmaker on a roll, at least right now, and it's kind of sticking in the meta on a roll that doesn't really get to make plays maybe ever in a game, but certainly not until much later in a game. And your sort of feed the double lift system works a lot better if you have that guy in mid.
Yeah.
You look at the teams that succeeded, they're big playmakers, the ones that you say, kind of live or die with the team and are carrying things. Are mid lane. You want Bjergsen, Hai, and Zhao Wei Zhao. Those are the guys moving forward. Voyboy is certainly maybe the most dynamic person on Curse, for better or worse, versus Cop at AD carry. I think you have one of your biggest talents and one of your strongest playmakers in a role that's not really allowed to make plays. And Double Lift has this bad habit of being right up front and getting blowed up right at the start, or and start of a fight, and turning that into the end of the game. I would see if maybe you could say, hey, let's play some solo queue, let's play some scrims, let's shake things up. We've seen Link jungle already, so whatever, but let's switch things up and try him in a different place. As strong as that bot lane synergy is between Afro and Double Lift, maybe that's not where Double Lift should be anymore. Maybe that's not where League is anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing that's kind of validates that theory is I think Double Lift actually had a really weak playoffs. I think he lost them a few games with strong throwing mistakes. I think as much as everybody kind of talks about his mechanical prowess, I think he actually had a kind of a poor playoff performance. And that's not to say he's an unskilled player. I think maybe moving him to middle, or at least having a break or something, what might make his decision-making kind of be reevaluate things.
Yeah, I think you've got to ask him to step up and not just be the biggest name on the team and the celebrity, but also the star and the leader. And I don't know, Travis, you obviously know him way better than us, if that's something he's capable of, or this is a move that he would welcome or even be open to, but I don't see how CLG gets much better with Double Lift in at AD carry.
I just remember when he lived with me, seeing this guy play some of the really big playmaking champions. I mean, not that Lee Sin is generally a pretty common mid laner, but I still really miss watching Double Lift play Lee Sin. This guy is really, really good at a lot of these more flashy champions, and I think that AD carry has been, especially currently right now, where, I mean, Tristan is a little flashy, right? But you don't see the Vayne stuff, right?
Yeah.
So I think that, I don't know, I think that could be really cool. Again, all of this is under the premise that CLG is in LCS right now. Just to paint a picture for everyone, this is a team that's won 1 game in 17. 2 of their players have at least got to be thinking right now that they're going to get replaced. You've got a coach that's taking off.
It's already been gone.
You've got a lot of pressure underneath this Curse Academy situation, especially because you're going up against Saint Vicious, right? And then a lot of people point at the expansion tournament, but we're already hearing rumors from, Anne Prag tweeted, and it's certainly very reasonable that Koreans are going to start trying to come over here for that. And if you're rebuilding it, let's say you don't make it into the LCS next week, you try to rebuild your team, but now you're faced with all these Korean teams. I don't know if CLG is going to be in LCS next split. I think a lot of people are operating under the assumption that they might be. I mean, it might even be a probable thing that they are, but I think that there's still a really big chance that they aren't.
Well, let's save the foreigner talk for a little bit later in the show, but I do agree with you, looking just a tiny bit ahead to relegations, that if you were picking one of the 3 teams up for relegations, you'd pick CLG to play right now. Both Complexity and especially EG ended the season feeling pretty good about where their team was. CLG, not so much. So if
I
you're
think
Curse
EG
Academy,
is worse off than CLG.
You think?
Yeah, we
we
should
should
go
have this
into
conversation
that.
right now.
So what's wrong with EG?
They have not. They have just started practicing just now.
Oh, because they took the
Or
break
actually,
off
I guess it
PAX?
was yesterday. Was their day that, or it was the evening of everybody flying back from PAX.
Yeah.
So they've got basically like a little bit over, like barely over a week to prepare. Like these guys haven't even been playing League. Like,
yeah, but even
Creflo-
Rusty, they don't hate each other, right? And they don't have a new coach and new strategies or whatever. Like even Rusty,
I mean,
they
do
don't
they
hate
not
each other.
Just
though?
'cause we-
Because,
I don't know, but
I've only heard, like, I'm not privy to anything private or anything like that, but we did see, like, what was it, Helios call out Inox on Twitter, essentially. Like, I mean, they did win, like, the 4 games at the very end of the split, but, like, I'm almost ready to call that a fluke. I don't look
Yeah,
at that and then I don't look at that, then see them all not play for a month and be like, well, they did win those 4 games at the end. Like they got that 4-week break. They deserve it, you know.
yeah.
Like I actually
Did they really take a 4-week break?
Who did we see? Yeah, well, Crepo was at Gamescom, and then at PAX.
That's true.
And I don't think they really played anything after. I know that Helios just got back from Korea recently, so and yeah, like Alltech was gone, so they've like maybe some of them have been playing solo queues. Almost certainly Helios was over in Korea, but I'm also thinking EG's out. Who are they playing Team 8 or are they playing? Who are they?
EG's playing Coast.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Coast just changed their roster. I don't.
Yeah,
I
think
mean,
okay. So
Yeah.
I think I'd be most scared of Team 8 and Curse Academy over Coast at this moment, but still, like I could very easily see EG crumbling. On the other hand, that's a team that just consistently goes into relegations all the time. So
yeah, I don't know. I'm a Crepo fan. I'm an EG fan, so I'm rooting for them, I suppose. But you're right, a full month, and that's been pretty underpublicized. I mean, I think I wasn't even really aware, even though knowing that Crepo was traveling, that they weren't practicing at all. That's a long time to not be together, playing together. So, I think there's a lot of risk. Maybe Complexity then is the strongest of the final 3.
no, I think
that's
Complexity is the one that I think is safest. Although they're playing against Team 8, and from what I understand, because I haven't watched much of the Challenger. But, like, I was around whenever all the teams were discussing who they were going to pick, right? And actually it was hilarious because Saint was like, yo, we want you to pick us. You know, not even, like, in a taunting way, but he was telling Kelby and Doublelift, like, just on the, like, we ran past him on the street in Seattle, and he was like, yeah, you guys should pick us or whatever. Like, Curse Academy wanted to play CLG. Team 8, from what I understand, everyone's fucking afraid of Team 8 because they are these guys who will just cheese you to no end. Like, we don't see that much cheese these days, like real cheese in League of Legends the way we used to, like in Season 2. But Team 8 will just pull out, like, the most ridiculous stuff. So, I think a lot of, like, that's the biggest, like, I think that on the surface, you have the biggest chance to beat them. Like, you are stronger than them. Like, they are supposedly the weakest team. But they also are like, you're going to spin the wheel of fortune right before you go lock into games against them, supposedly.
Yeah, I mean, it should be a great series. It's Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday next week. That's kind of random days in terms of LCS history and stuff, where they're doing EU and then NA, one relegation match each day, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I think it's going to be a really exciting series, all 3 of them. And who knows who we'll see. The good news is you have this backup tournament that exists. We'll sort of move on to news a little bit. Since we last talked, Riot announced that they'll be expanding both LCS to 10 teams. They'll have some kind of play-in qualifying tournament for the final new 2 spots, that the losers of the relegation match are automatically in, and then they'll pull from the ranked 5s list to see who goes in there and stuff. So I mean, I think this is interesting. It brings up a lot of questions, sort of dovetailing with there are more foreigners representing NA than native-born North American players, and this was kind of rumors of an influx. The strategy seemed validated that you bring in foreign players to kind of supplement North American talent. Do you think we'll see 2 new foreign teams taking those final 2 spots when that expansion happens?
I certainly think we'll see at least 2 foreign teams trying to compete for those spots, but again, we have this thing is like so far away. We've got entire. I'm going to be through all of Asia and vacationing in Australia before we even have any idea of what that tournament is going to look like. I don't know. It's possible though.
Should Riot be concerned? And I know you asked Nick Allen about this, and it was unclear where to draw the line. But should Riot be concerned that suddenly North America is majority non-North American, and then as you expand the teams, maybe you have 3 full foreign teams potentially going into spring split, more relegations, even more summer split, a kind of WCS StarCraft-like situation where Koreans and Chinese teams are taking over the softer regions?
If I was Riot right now, I would come out and say, hey, just a heads up, in order to qualify to compete in this expansion tournament, you need to be eligible to work in Canada, the United States, or Mexico by like October.
Actual work eligibility.
Yeah, I think that's the key. Is like right now, basically all of the pro players that are coming in are on tourist visas, and if they require work eligibility, I think we'll see people more invested in the NA scene. It's not just like people like Quantic who just come in for a month or two. Or whatever.
And that doesn't prevent people moving. There was all of that talk about how now esports athletes can get visas, traditional sports visas, and come in. It's just not what they're doing. Where I think we're seeing tourist visas really undermine the competitive spirit of a lot of games in LCS right now, where players go home for a week or two, or CLG takes their whole team to Korea, all of that being kind of dictated by kind of sketchy visa situations where people are coming in as tourists and then working maybe or not.
I think if you are living here, it's fine. Like, I actually think LMQ is a great example of what I would like to see, where it's a team that enters into the U.S. at the start of the year. You see them, like I was able to interview them and do house tours. Like, people were aware of this. It was a big story.
Right.
And they were able to kind of build it up. And these guys were also sort of, I don't want to say forced, but they also during that time started to pick up English a little bit, but enough that they were able to win the hearts of a lot of fans. Like, that's a good way to go about it, right?
And they're not on tourist visas, so they didn't have to go home partway through the split and reset their status or whatever. I think that's exactly what we should be looking for.
What I don't want to see is like somebody show up like at the end of October. This team sort of grinds itself through solo queue for 2 to 3 weeks, gets in, and if they get in, they're in, or if they're not, they just like bail out. You know, like that's not as cool.
So do you think Riot would actually step up and enforce? Because right now they kind of don't. They sort of don't ask, don't tell, right? You're work eligible, right? Wink, wink. Oh yeah, no problem. I'm here. I'm in the country. But they would actually have to enforce this in some capacity. Yeah. Is that a step that you would expect Riot to take, given their history?
Yeah, I mean, they definitely have a history of trying to enforce their rules.
Sort of. Yeah. I mean, they haven't enforced this, but I think we're getting to a place where they have to.
I think next season we might see some changes.
And if they don't, I think they'll really regret not doing it.
I think the thing that is most... So if they actually did this, and I'm not saying they will or not, I actually think that they won't. But if they did, knowing from what I've seen of Riot, I think what will happen is they'll be too busy with Worlds, and then at the very last minute, after teams have announced that they're coming over, they'll announce this rule.
Yeah.
And Riot will go crazy.
Yeah.
And, like, you'll see a bunch of stuff from, like, all the Korean... Like, Mani, Doa...
Right.
Little Susie, all the...
Thorn will get really unhappy.
Personalities, like...
Yeah. So speaking
almost certain how this would go down.
Yeah. So speaking of late announcements that surprised people, there's a lot of talk about Incarnati0n not being able to attend Worlds. We had a passionate Skype argument.
This is me at my sleeves to go head to head with Hunter.
Is that an Incarnati0n-y type shirt adjustment? No, I mean I think we had a passionate argument about it, and I sort of am on. I sort of tend on Riot's side, but I'll give my stance up front. Whether he should be banned or not, let's put that aside because that's not for us to judge. He's got a lifetime ban. He should be nowhere near competitive LCS. Backstage previously, other things. And in my opinion, Riot made a real mistake, which they're finally correcting, by letting him be a guest all season at European LCS. That's the only thing to discuss or not, I think. Put the ban aside, but if he has a lifetime ban, I don't think he should be anywhere near LCS. But as a player, as a team member, as a guest, anything.
I know. Okay, so I know how this guest stuff works because I've been there a lot. Like these are normally people's girlfriends, sponsors, friends or siblings or something like that. Parents sometimes, right? These are not never meant to be like a guest of the team in the sense that this is somebody who's like working with the team or like a member of the team or anything like that. So I don't, and I think that had Riot like banned him from the studio, people would have been like, "What the heck? This is crazy." I also don't think it's completely necessary. Like the guest role is there to just be like, "Hey, this is somebody who is just like a friend or a companion or something like that." Like it's not even part. It's like it's become sort of this thing where it sounds like it's like this official rule book kind of thing. It's literally just sort of like a thing that the player management team, from my understanding, allows teams to do. Like, hey, if you've got a guest, let us know a couple days beforehand.
I know, but we
make
all
sure they're
knew,
on the list.
We all knew Incarnati0n was coaching. So when he shows up, and like, oh no, he's a guest. Maybe you've met him. He's my friend. He's nobody. Then they say,
Right.
no, we know who he is. We all know he's your coach, and he has a lifetime ban. The kind of thing we've given out to 3 people ever. We'll see you later, and don't bring him back next week. That doesn't seem crazy.
Well, the thing
to
is
me.
that like I think that this is a problem where there's a very strict rule book, right, and a set of guidelines, and it was mixing with this like, hey, like we've got this like informal guest rule, like, hey, you want to put somebody on the list for the party, that's completely cool, right? And so because people don't really see how this stuff plays out, I think it's gotten kind of mixed in their mind, right? Like, but again, like the people who are in charge of this like coach thing, or not this coach thing, who are in charge of like the rule book stuff, are not necessarily the same people in charge of the guest list. Like I don't think those conversations ever got, or even the concepts of those things, even got mixed in people's minds.
Which, in my opinion, is a mistake on Riot's side. I don't blame SK for trying to sneak this guy through and taking advantage of a situation to keep their coach there. I don't think they should be upset about it now. I think that's pretty unfair to Riot to pull that out. But I don't know, Spellsy, where your thoughts lie on this.
I don't know. I think that a lifetime ban from competing in LCS should not extend to coaching in LCS. I think he got banned, like in other esports, in Dota and CS:GO and all that kind of stuff. There have been a lot of former cheaters who now go pro players. They got banned from Warcraft 3, they got banned from, Valve or whatever, and they go on, they make a new account, and then they come back and play. Like
right.
Riot's banning this guy, and I think it's okay for him to be coaching.
I think the concept of a lifetime ban, like you can argue whether or not somebody should be lifetime banned in general, but I definitely think it should extend. I mean, this is the reason why it's like this is because Riot doesn't want to be uplifting any, like Riot is consistently, and even like the esports, like all of us are consistently fighting this conception that everyone who plays League of Legends is a rager, gamers are awful people.
Right.
I mean, this is a longer discussion around like all the crazy stuff that's happened in the past couple of weeks around journalists and hackers threatening airplanes and that kind of thing. But like the last thing that they want is to have somebody on a stage helping a player lift up a trophy who was completely lifetime banned from. So this is why the team member rule, which involves like owners, I think general managers and players, makes it so that you can only be that if you pass like this toxic meter or whatever you want to call it, right?
Right.
So I think the only problem here is that Riot has yet to create a formal coaching position in the LCS. I would guess that they will have that by next year.
But even with that, he could just be not the formal coach, but a analyst type, and then come as a guest next year.
Yeah, but then there's a very obvious thing. Like, I still think that SK probably should have had an idea that, like, hey, you got this guy. Like, oh, okay, so team members are never allowed to be like these guys that have been jerks in the past, right? So if you ever had a role that would require him to be a team member, he would be not allowed. So hey, surprise, surprise! Like suddenly there's a role called coach that would be a team member thing, and he's not allowed.
But what stops him from just being an analyst and then being the guest?
The only thing is that, and we again, like this is kind of my final thought on this. It's just that that Riot has two different relationships, parallel relationships with teams and organizations. One is the people that are running this league have a formal, rule-restricted relationship with these guys. The second thing is that, in a sense, they're all kind of partners with these teams. They do content with them. They're partnered to try to make esports survive and all that kind of thing. And I've heard the term partner used before between companies and these organizations and Riot. So, but as the rule-restricted, like, people that run the league, they never had a requirement to tell SK ahead of time. As a partner, they kind of fucked over their partner by not giving them at least a heads up ahead of time. So I think that's where they failed, but not in the league role.
I mean, I agree that that was a failure. I would say that they have to eat letting him go to the studio the whole time because it created this conflict that they have to clean up. So I think they're bad on both. Whether the ban should extend or not, or that kind of thing, I think is a debate, and they're going to have to create clear rules. But I think your point earlier, Travis, that ultimately if you're Riot, that's not the kind of guy that you want associated with your teams and your scene. If he's deserving of the lifetime ban, then you want him to go away. I mean, they say, never play League of Legends again, we want nothing to do with you, go away. That they don't want that guy around, and they should be even more active in saying, don't associate with this guy, don't bring him to events, we don't want to hear, they should. I think that's on them. Ultimately, we'll see what happens, but I think this is a step in the right move for sort of maturing that policy and making it more generally applicable when it was kind of started as just a online tournament kind of vague thing. So in this, again, putting aside whether Incarnati0n should or shouldn't be banned, I have no comment on that. If someone is going to be lifetime banned, they should go away entirely.
Hunter, I know we only have about 6 more minutes left of the show. What amazing topics are left?
None? That's it, Travis.
Is that the show?
Yeah, that's it. The show is over. We won't do a quick cut like I do on every phone call with you where I hang up before you even know it's over. But this was, I think, a really exciting PAX week and a ton to look forward to. We kind of roll straight from here, promotion, relegations, and then Worlds in 2 minutes. Travis, or 2 weeks. Travis, when do you start your Korean interview boot camp, where you'll be training 16 hours a day with your sister Korean interviewer to practice and get to the Korean level, the foreigner level of interview skills that you're going to bring to Worlds?
That joke is way too long, Hunter. Cut it down a bit. I don't know. By the way, we never really talked about how every team is going to Korea except for LMQ, who's going to China, and I guess SK. You can't look if you're SK. What are you doing, man? You gotta get some practice in. They're not going, right, to Korea?
SK?
I haven't missed.
I don't know. They weren't.
I think SK is going.
I have no idea.
Well, they haven't gone yet. Yeah, because Anrated was just on Taco in Germany, and I haven't heard them saying that they're going.
My favorite thing about the Korean boot camp is that, despite Loco's tweet and everything, how confident were they that they were going to Korea? The Cloud9 flew the next day from Seattle. They knew, we're going to Korea. We packed our bags. Our flight is booked. We're going on. TSM had to go home, do laundry, pack their bags. Despite that tweet, they clearly are not bringing the confidence level the Cloud9 have that we're moving on to Korea. Beyond that boot camp, I think Thorin's comment was the best, that the Korean teams have been boot camping in Korea their whole lives, so they clearly have the significant advantage, right? And the Chinese.
I think that right at this point, it's less about. I think everybody's just going to a central location that happens to be Korea. Yeah. I think they'll probably be scrimming Korean teams and stuff, but I also feel like they might be scrimming each other more.
I have no faith in the Korean solo queue magically elevating NA or European players to some alternate level. Certainly didn't help CLG all that much to spend.
Well, if you stay in North
America,
there, you're definitely not going to get any practice.
Yeah,
or at least you're going to be getting practice against teams that literally might be kicked out of the LCS soon or aren't in the LCS. So
right.
No, I don't know if that's going to get you ready to go up against Samsung Blue.
I think Spellsy's absolutely right. Getting all the teams together so they can scrim each other. It happens to be in Korea. Even though their first games will not be played in Seoul, they'll be played somewhere else. They happen to be gathering in Korea.
Yeah.
That's great. Beyond that, it could be anywhere. Season 5 Worlds Antarctica, they all show up to start scrimming there. The legendary Antarctic solo queue carries everybody forward, whatever, right? They just happen to be in Seoul. Playing against Penguins. Yeah.
Anyway, to answer your question, Hunter, I'm really scared because I'm freaking out right now because last night I'm putting the final touches. As you know, we're still in the flux of deciding what World's coverage will look like, and I'm sure we'll have details for that later. But I'm sort of looking at very, very real possibility that I, at the very least, will be in Taipei. And I had a moment of terror last night as I'm about to book flights soon. Probably today I should be getting flight details around that. And I realized that
it's 10 days.
15th is the day that I have to fly out, which is literally just a little bit over a week. And for those that don't know, my current plans are probably Taipei and Singapore, Korea, and then I'm going to go on vacation to Australia and hopefully see everybody at PAX Australia at the end of that. Which is just about 2 months of being out of this country, which I love so much, and it's the greatest country in the world. And so it's just very scary to me that in just about 10 days, like week from Monday, I'm going to be leaving.
Well, we're all looking forward to you being out of the country for 2 months. So there's nothing else to say there.
Do for you guys.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, it's the coverage. That's right. Yeah.
So I'm sure that's what you're looking forward to. Either way, everyone can follow me at SOTL Travis. onGamers.com is where I put all of my content. People can check that stuff out there. I frequently post on the League of Legends subreddit. I check my email, sometimes travis.gafford@cbsinteractive.com. There's a lot of different places where people can reach out to me. I'll even be at the promotion tournaments next week, so people can check that out, though I might not be on camera because I'm having surgery. But I think that's where, these are all places where my content is and where people can find and communicate and interact with me. Hunter, where can people do that with you?
So, yeah, obviously things continue. It's going to be exciting next week. You can follow all of our coverage on ongamers.com.